Hello, welcome once again to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto. Story just crossed my desk, and it's something near and dear to my heart. I've complained about before. In fact, I did a video specifically about junk phone calls. You know, the people who try to scam you by calling your office or your home and lying to you about crazy stuff. And I actually shot a video where I messed with one of them for long enough to get them to hang up on me. But this is in the news. Feds charge 24 in billion-dollar Medicare brace scam. This is another one of the phone calls I was getting on a daily basis, if not several times a day, where the recorded message says, "Hi, do you have problems with your back or knees? If so, we can get you a free brace from Medicare at no cost to you. Please stay on the line." And I would hang up on it around that point. But if you stayed on the line, you'd be connected to an operator who would then work out this scam. So federal agents this week broke up a $1 billion Medicare scam that peddled unneeded orthopedic braces to hundreds of thousands of seniors. And by the way, you might be wondering, Steve, are you a senior? Well, not really, but they call everybody. And they're hoping people have access to Medicare so they can bill Medicare for it. In my case, I'm not on Medicare, so it wouldn't help. But 24 people were charged, including doctors, accused of writing bogus prescriptions. And there's several takeaways from the story, one of which is it's apparently really, really easy to rip off Medicare. I've seen articles on 60 Minutes about it, and it's just like, if you can get the right information from people, you can just turn it into money. So there's a problem, I think, at the government level on this as well. The Justice Department said the scheme relied on overseas call centers that pried Medicare numbers from beneficiaries. Authorities also announced charges against owners of call centers, telemedicine firms, medical equipment companies, and those shipped unneeded back, shoulder, wrist, and knee braces. And I'm not exactly sure how you practice telemedicine. Okay, perhaps you call me old school, but I would think practicing medicine would require you to actually see a doctor, not necessarily talk to one on the phone through a call center in the Philippines. Profits from the scheme were laundered through offshore shell companies and then used to buy high-end cars, yachts, and luxury homes here and abroad, officials said. Medicare's anti-fraud unit, and yes, the fraud is so bad that Medicare has its own anti-fraud unit, said it's taking action against 130 medical equipment companies that have been implicated in the scam. The companies billed the program a total of $1.7 billion, but not all of that was paid out. The loss to Medicare was estimated at a little over $1.2 billion. And so you have to ask yourself, how long does a scam like this run where it actually wraps up 130 different medical equipment companies alone? Not counting all the other people, the telemarketers and scammers and whatever else. And the fact that they actually got $1.2 billion fraudulently before they were stopped. So the Health and Human Services Inspector General's office said that the fast-moving scam was fueled by kickbacks among the parties involved. The FBI, the IRS, and 17 U.S. attorneys' offices took part in the crackdown. The telemedicine we are talking about is basically a telescam, said Gary Cantrell, who oversees fraud investigations for HHS. We are not talking about the use of advanced technology to provide better access to care. No, they're using telephones to rip people off. Officials said the scam was detected last summer as complaints from beneficiaries poured into the Medicare fraud hotline. And like I said, I got this call every single day for months at a time. I would just hang up on it, but other people apparently didn't. The telemarketers would reach out to seniors offering free orthopedic braces, and they also touted them through television and radio ads. Interested beneficiaries would be patched through to a call center, part of what officials described as an international telemarketing network with operations in the Philippines and throughout Latin America. After verifying Medicare coverage, the seniors would then be transferred to telemedicine companies for consultations with doctors who wrote prescriptions for orthopedic braces regardless of whether you needed one or not. Sometimes the same patient would get several braces. Well, after all, you got 2 knees, you got 2 wrists, and you got 1 back. So at least 5 braces sounds to me like you need. The call centers would collect prescriptions and sell them to medical equipment companies, which would ship the braces to beneficiaries and then bill Medicare. Here is where it gets scary, okay? Medical equipment companies would get 500 to $900 per brace from Medicare, and they'd pay kickbacks of $300 a brace. So there's an obvious problem in our system, regardless of this scam, where somebody can pay a kickback of $300 on a $900 brace, and Medicare, our tax dollars, goes to pay for the $900 brace despite the fact that the profit margin is large enough for someone to pay a $300 kickback, and they still make enough money to continue this, and they're doing it illegally, which means the risk is even higher, so they've got to be making a lot of money. So it makes you think that the $900 brace might actually be worth about 20 or 30 bucks. And I suspect that that's probably what it was actually worth, if in fact it was worth anything. Officials said it's one of the biggest frauds the Inspector General's office has ever seen. Charges were being brought against defendants in California, Florida, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and Texas. Cantrell said federal agents had gained cooperation from people familiar with the schemes. The breadth of this nationwide conspiracy should be frightening to all who rely on some form of health care, the IRS Criminal Investigations Chief Don Fort said in a statement. The conspiracy details broad corruption, massive amounts of greed, and systemic flaws in our healthcare system that were exploited by the defendants. That last part is actually the biggest problem, the number one problem. There are systemic flaws in our healthcare system where you can apparently just get someone's Medicare number, send it off to Medicare and go, I want $900 to give this person a knee brace. And someone cuts you a check for $900. That's insanity. Attempts to reach defendants named by the Justice Department were unsuccessful. In several cases, telephone numbers associated with them were disconnected. Others did not respond to messages, and the investigation is continuing. Authorities asked doctors who have been involved with telemedicine and medical equipment fraud to voluntarily come forward. Healthcare fraud is a pervasive problem that costs taxpayers tens of billions of dollars a year, and that's a very serious problem. I actually pay taxes. I hate to see my tax dollars get wasted. The true extent of it is unknown, and some cases involve gray areas of complex payment policies. It shouldn't be that complicated. Someone actually needs a knee brace, they should go to a doctor who should then prescribe them a knee brace, and it should be bought at a reasonable price. And if then you bill Medicare for that, that would make some sense to me. Experts say part of the problem is that Medicare is required to pay medical bills promptly, which means money often goes out before potential frauds get flagged. Investigators call that pay and chase. And that's a problem. And, we've also heard about the problem, remember a few years ago, and again, 60 Minutes did this, where you could file a fraudulent tax return and claim some huge refund. And the IRS would send you your refund, and then they'd go, oh, this is fraudulent. And they go trying to get the refund back, and it's gone. And there was a time when they were actually issuing the refunds on debit cards that anybody could use. And they were often sending, a dozen or 2 dozen refunds to the same house. And it's often a vacant house on an abandoned lot in some inner city someplace. And then what happens is the person who files their real tax return can't get their refund because they say, oh, you've been flagged because someone filed a fraudulent return with your name on it earlier. And it winds up hurting not just the government and the taxpayers, but this individual taxpayer. And again, it's because the government is this big lumbering child that can't get out of its own way. And they're paying bills before they realize, oh, the bill is fraudulent. So this is a very serious problem. In recent years, Medicare has tried to adapt techniques used by credit card companies to head off fraud. Law enforcement coordination has grown with strike forces of federal prosecutors and agents along with state counterparts specializing in healthcare investigations. Officials said the government has options to recoup at least some of the money lost to Medicare, including seizing fraudsters' assets and accounts, as well as property purchased with the proceeds of the scam. And that's, of course, assuming they can reach it. So if some of this money's in the Philippines, was used to buy a mansion in the Philippines, good luck seizing that. Now, the people here in America who are committing the scam, you might be able to, seize their stuff, but then the question is, can you recover 100 cents on the dollar for everything they spent? And the answer, of course, is almost always, no, you can't. The Medicare beneficiaries drawn into the orthopedic braces scam didn't have to pay anything up front, but Cantrell said they have been harmed as well because a beneficiary's private information, once in the hands of fraudsters, can be resold for many illegal purposes. So they get your information, they sell you a knee brace, they then sell your information to somebody else who then racks up some fraudulent charges in your name, and the scam continues even though you're not there anymore. So you only benefit from the first part, but not the second part. Additionally, if a beneficiary whose information was misused ever does actually need an orthopedic brace, he or she may encounter waiting periods because they're going to say, well, you already got one. So the program limits how often it pays for certain supplies and equipment. So it does that. They won't pay the same thing twice, but the first time might be fraudulent. So it can be very attractive to receive equipment, Cantrell said, but after giving out your identifying information, it could be compromised to perpetuate additional fraud. There is no fraud without the ID number of a Medicare beneficiary. So I've often told people that when salespeople call you, just hang up on them. And I know people say, well, I suppose, but, shouldn't you listen for a split second? And no, if they had something you wanted to buy, you'd already be out shopping for it. The odds that someone can call you at random with an automatic dialer and actually have something you need to buy at the exact moment they call you is about 1 in a trillion. So it's not even worth doing. It's the same thing when people walk up and knock on my front door of my house. I don't care what they're selling. If it's an adult, I don't care. The only people who ever show up are people trying to sell me stuff I really don't need, or they're trying to sell me a religion, which I really don't want to buy either. I don't want to tell you, well, maybe someday I will, what happened to the last people who showed up on my front porch to tell me that in the afterlife it was going to get ugly for me, because it got ugly for them in the current life. But if a child shows up and knocks on my door and looks at me with, the big, orphan eyes and says, I'm selling candy for my Little League team, I'll throw money at him. I will. And I've done that. I mean, you show up selling something and you're saying it's for a good cause, unless there's an obvious disconnect that screams at me, if you've got candy and I've got money and I do, boom, we'll have a transaction on the front porch. But the second I hear someone knock at the door and I look and I see it's an adult, the adrenaline starts pumping because I'm not going to be buying whatever it is you're selling. And the same needs to be true when someone calls your house. So I feel really bad for older people because, and again, don't get me wrong, I am an older person. I'm 57 years old. I've mentioned it now somehow for some weird reason 3 times in a row in videos. But when I hit 50, AARP started sending me stuff. Congratulations, Steve, you're now a retired person. It's like, no, I'm not. I might be 50, but I'm not retired. But, don't get me wrong. There's a problem in that people used to be raised that you're polite to strangers. Someone calls your house and it's a wrong number. You say, I'm sorry, wrong number. And you hang up. Yeah, that was the old days. Now when you're getting bombarded with phone calls, you shouldn't answer them if you don't recognize them. Or the second you realize it's a sales call, hang up on them. And there are people out there who have a hard time doing that because they were raised to be polite to strangers. And I'm here to tell you that our society has actually gone off the rails in one extent. And that is, there are now large groups of people that you don't need to be polite to and that you shouldn't be polite to. And one of them is the salesman who knocks on your door without being invited. And one of them is the person who calls you with an auto dialer to sell you something you don't need, most likely because it's a ripoff. Hang up on them. But it's so good to see that they finally did stop this one scam, and it looks like they're going to recover $1.2 billion, but there's a $500 million that they think is gone. It's gone. So, or actually, I might have gotten that wrong. It might be they lost $1.2 billion. They were billed 1.7, so they saved $500 million. They lost 1.2. They'll see if they can get that back. But if they've made the auto dialers selling me the braces stop, good job, because that means they've actually done one good thing. So feds charged 24 and $1 billion Medicare brace scam. It's a step in the right direction. Let's see if they can keep that up. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.